Today I'm with Ryan Mauro, who is the founder of the Doubting Thomas Research Foundation, and he is joining us today on a program that I call Connect the Dots. So there's a lot of dots to be connected in this interview. But first, let's explain to our viewers what the Doubting Thomas Research Foundation is all about.
Well, I created the Doubting Thomas Research Foundation a few years ago to investigate specifically the story of the Exodus, Moses, and Mount Sinai because I was interested in learning more about the degree to which the Exodus story and other biblical accounts could be reconciled with modern understandings of science, archaeology, and history. That if we treated the biblical accounts as credible historical records, to what degree could we find evidence to support that? And so I was specifically focused on the issue of the location of Mount Sinai, because the reason there's this consensus among many academic experts that the story of Moses and the Exodus did not actually happen is because in the area thought to be Mount Sinai, there has been very little evidence found in terms of archaeology to indicate that that's a historical event. So myself and others have raised the question, well, maybe we're just looking in the wrong spot.
Yeah, so you mentioned in some of your films that you have out there that you may have found the real Mount Sinai. So where is the other suspected Mount Sinai, and why do you think this is the real version?
So traditionally, what most people think is Mount Sinai is located in the Sinai Peninsula. It goes back to a tradition of a few hundred years after Christ, and it is because of the lack of archaeological evidence supporting that event took place there that people assume, well, then the event didn't happen because you're saying it happened at this location and we're not finding supporting evidence. In fact, it doesn't even seem to fit the biblical narrative, so it must be a myth. So there have been other candidates for Mount Sinai in the Middle East proposed, and what we feel is the strongest candidate is actually located in northwestern Saudi Arabia. And that's partially because ancient historical accounts have consistently said that Mount Sinai is the highest mountain outside of this area called Midian, or the city of Midian, that Moses fled to when he was trying to escape from Egypt because he had killed an Egyptian. And what we find here in this area is that in northwestern Saudi Arabia, if you follow the book of Exodus and you look at what events and what paths the Bible describes, because it's pretty specific, you find evidence of the different stops that Moses and the Hebrews must have taken. From the Red Sea crossing, there's a very strong match, to the 12 wells of Elim where they went and got water, to the split rock where Moses struck a rock and it split and water poured forth. There's a match even for that. And so you follow this trail as described in the Bible in this area, and it all seems to match to the point where once you get to the mountain, there's even evidence of the golden calf worship scene. There's evidence of an altar at the foot of the mountain because God told Moses to build an altar at the foot of the mountain and also to erect 12 pillars. And so there's all this amazing evidence that most people just weren't aware of now, and it's visually stunning. So it really brings the story of the Exodus and the Bible to life in a way that really hasn't been done before if you go there. So we released a documentary that's gone viral on YouTube called Finding the Mountain of Moses, and now this is a popular idea and people are discussing it. We're very excited.
You know, that's interesting because that was going to lead into my next question is if you found what you think might be the real Mount Sinai, did you find other historical biblical paths that Israel took on their journey to the promised land? And you did. I watched that video. It's absolutely astounding. But the thing that I walk away from after watching it is, why do you still call it you may have found the real Mount Sinai? Because it seems to me you found all the evidence you need to show that this is the real Mount Sinai. So why keep calling it you may have found the real Mount Sinai?
Because you can never really know. I think the evidence is pretty overwhelming that if this story is true, this is a strong match for it, that unlike any other time in history, we should believe that this is a historical account. But I want to stay away from making statements of fact when you can't 100% prove something. I want to be as open-minded as possible and take an academic, somewhat neutral approach to this, which is what the Doubting Thomas Research Foundation does when it comes to investigating these biblical accounts. We're not positioning ourselves as missionaries or people engaged in apologetics and saying, oh, we have to defend every little detail of the Bible. What we're trying to say is if we take a step back and we try to be neutral and we look at what's understood about science and archaeology and history, what can we reconcile with the biblical account? And what we're finding is that there's a stronger case than the vast majority of people, Christians and non-Christians, understand. It seems like there's so much archaeological evidence to support almost every story of the Bible that we've reviewed so far. It just hasn't been brought together in one spot. So you might hear about a find here and some evidence found over there, but the cumulative case isn't really being presented to people. And so that's why the next generation, if this doesn't change, is going to think that the stories of the Bible are just myths, just like Greek myths, because people aren't bringing together all the evidence and lining it up and making it clear that these were not written as myths. It's clear they're written as falsifiable historical accounts.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you're not calling it the real Mount Sinai because you want to leave room for perhaps further research, but also doubt, which brings me back to the name of your foundation, the Doubting Thomas Research Foundation. A lot of people want to know why you're calling it the Doubting Thomas Research Foundation rather than something a little bit more like, yeah, we found it. We have no doubts. But you're keeping that doubting there. How come?
Because the way God wired me from the beginning is to be very cynical, to a point that's very annoying. But it leads me to do very detailed research because I'm always questioning myself. And so even though I am a believer and I am a Christian, I'm open about the fact that I have a lot of agnostic days. I sometimes have some atheist days. But for the way my brain and personality works, that's healthy because I then ask these critical questions and I go through a cycle where, just like doubting Thomas, when he didn't really believe that Jesus was resurrected and he demanded to actually feel where the spots in Jesus' palms because he was so cynical. That's kind of the story of my own faith. I go through these rounds of cynicism. I have these questions. I have these doubts. But then, unlike what a lot of people do, I then try to find answers for them and say, all right, well, did I come up with some point that hasn't been addressed before? And time again, after I put some research into it, I come away satisfied with the answers, and then my faith gets stronger. And then over a period of time, I'll come back to that again.
So what you're saying is that you're not set out to prove a theory. You're set out to understand the theory and to see whether it can fit into this narrative or it does not fit into this narrative. And you'll have your doubts and let the evidence direct what the outcome might be, whether it's true or not true. And in this particular case, you've looked at enough of the pathway from Mount Sinai through the path to the Promised Land. You've seen all these different landmarks that seem to indicate exactly what's in the Bible, that perhaps you're not doubting so much anymore as to whether this is the Mount Sinai.
It's healthy to have a little bit of doubt, but I would say in terms of weighing theories, this is an exceptionally strong theory. Mm-hmm. I went to Saudi Arabia in order to film this at a time when tourism was banned in Saudi Arabia, and one of the things I was most amazed by was how when you go to northwestern Saudi Arabia, the local Saudis have long believed this is Mount Sinai, and they'll show you, they're like, hey, you want me to show you where Moses walked? You want me to show you where he brought the Hebrews? But because Saudi Arabia is so isolated, as a theocracy, very few people outside the country even knew about these sites existing, and there was no modern footage of it. And so when Finding the Mountain of Moses came out, that's what was really powerful, is that it presented it in a new way, but also the people that heard these rumors and grainy pictures about this evidence existing, they didn't have clear footage, they didn't have what would be convincing to a skeptic. But now we have high quality footage showing these rumors are true, this evidence is there, and the locals have long believed it and think that we're the weird ones for not knowing it was there.
Yeah, so speaking of the doubt here, people can listen to what you just said, they can watch the video that you produced about it, but if they still have their doubts, you'll actually take them to Saudi Arabia and let them walk the path, won't you?
That's absolutely right. So two of the planks of where Doubting Thomas Research Foundation is moving forward is first, obviously, with research, which that's entirely dependent upon support from donors for our survival. We're releasing regular videos now discussing things like the events of Passover, what's the evidence for that, giving updates on biblical archaeological finds that most people haven't heard of. So that's something we want to continue doing, is educating people about how much evidence there is, and also doing our own research, because we have some very exciting leads related to Mount Sinai and other biblical accounts in the region that we want to pursue. We can't fully discuss right now for obvious reasons. If you hear about there being a possible archaeological find somewhere, you don't want looters to come. But there are paths for research that are very exciting to us that we need to raise support for. And then the second plank of moving forward is bringing people to Saudi Arabia in a safe, legal way. The Saudi government is now allowing outsiders, Christians, to come on our tours to Saudi Arabia and see these Moses-related sites for themselves, and to even meet local Saudis who is just passed down through the generations, that this is where Moses went. This is the split rock where Moses struck and water poured forth. And so it's a really amazing experience that I encourage everyone to try to get their church group together on, or their family. And that helps us build relationships within Saudi Arabia as well, that advances further research. By the way, one of the interesting things that has happened is that I co-led the first ever officially Christian tour in Saudi history. And that same tour was also the first ever approved tour to go to what we think is Mount Sinai and these other Moses-related sites. Previously, you weren't allowed to, but the Saudis are now opening up, so people that come on our tour can be one of very, very few outsiders to ever set foot where we believe Moses also walked.
Yeah, and those watching, I need to tell you, you need to watch this video that Ryan produced, and you can find the link in the bottom of this video. Click on it, watch it, because my mouth literally dropped when I saw some of the video footage, especially the split rock scene. It was absolutely amazing, and it was very convincing to me, and very admirable that you would actually go on, at that time, a bit of a dangerous tour to be running around Saudi Arabia trying to hunt down these locations. But you know, we'll let you tell that story in another episode at another time. But for people who say, I want to go on this tour, when are you going to have one next? You had one last October, correct?
Right. So,
And October 2020, so people watching this now, it's October 2020. But if people are interested in doing a tour with you, how do they find out when the next tour will be?
the best way is to go to doubtingthomasresearch.com and sign up for our email updates. Also go to the Ryan Mauro Show, the YouTube channel where we post our video updates. That's also where you'll find the documentary. Subscribe that way. And of course the Doubting Thomas Research Foundation social media pages, so you get all these updates, because as you know, sometimes you'll post something to one of your social media pages and it's a question whether it's going to show up. So you want to make sure that you're linked to us in every way possible, especially by your email, and then you can potentially come on one of these tours if you're interested. If you get a church group together, I might even be able to work around your schedule. So you can see dates that you might be able to join, or you can discuss with me ways for a customized, more personal tour that works for you.
Now, give these people a bit of a clue. Besides, I would like to know too, when you go on these tours, you're on a Jeep, you're running around, how long does the tour take? You're in the middle of nowhere with no water, no food. It's not like they're going to have a McDonald's along the way
Right.
to stop at and eat. So how do people survive these tours when they're running around the deserts of Saudi Arabia?
Well, it's entirely camel-based. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
It's we have tour buses. It's very comfortable. I'm not the type of guy to want to go on tours where I'm just in a tent without nice showers and good food for several days. We want this to be an adventurous tour and vacation for you that people aren't going to believe that you actually got to go on. So it's very comfortable. It's very safe. It's approved by the Saudi government. So it's not like you're just going in there as strangers and then local tribesmen are going to be mad at you. No, you're going to be welcomed. It's a very different situation in Saudi Arabia than when I went initially. And I think that's one of the things that surprises people, is how much they feel relaxed when they do this type of thing. And for me, it feels like a vacation, because you're safe, but you're also pulled enough away from your cell phone if you're in the desert, pulled enough away from the stresses of your life in Western society to feel like a vacation, but it's also an adventure and a really life-changing experience for most people that go on it.
I'm sure it is. And you may not want to go into too much detail about this, but I understand that you might have an idea where Noah's Ark might be located. And I'm kind of curious because you know how things happen. You find what might be the real Mount Sinai, and then all of a sudden other leads start to come your way because they look and go, oh look, Ryan's a good investigator here. He can find these things, and you know I have a clue as to where something might be. So I'm not sure how you came about this knowledge of where Noah's Ark might be located, but can you share anything about that?
Well, I don't want to take personal credit for even the finding of the likely real Mount Sinai, because there are people who came before me that did a lot of research. What I brought to the picture was the fact that I'm not aware of anyone else who had gotten there and actually came back with footage that would work in a film. Everyone that had gone there had been arrested, or they were about to go there and they got kicked out. And so it was a bit of a miracle how that all came about. But the Doubting Thomas Research Foundation is just trying to dig up everything that we can in terms of historical accounts and theories about where different biblical evidences might be. And so obviously a lot of people ask about Noah's Ark. If it still exists, where would it be found? Because there are a lot of historical accounts indicating that what people believed were the remains of Noah's Ark existed, so where are they now? And so we're looking at a few different theories. There is one site in Turkey that I had dismissed for a while because it was my understanding that all the scientists had said it was just a rare geological formation that happened to look like a boat. But in recent years, there's been additional research done that is now leading to some really interesting questions about whether that was the right assessment. And so it's exciting to want to pursue every avenue possible because our contacts in Turkey involved in this type of scientific study are saying to us, hey, there's a real chance that this might be a man-made object that appears to match the dimensions of Noah's Ark. And so we feel that's worth pursuing. We're going to keep an open mind. But when you hear something like that from credible researchers, you've got to try to pursue it. And so that's something we're trying to fundraise for now.
Yeah, so I want to encourage everybody to take the time, go to the Doubting Thomas Research Foundation, take a look at what Ryan has up there, take a look at his videos. You're absolutely going to be amazed at what you see here. And remember, none of this is cheap, none of it comes free. Ryan has to raise money for these research projects, and look, if you take a look at his videos, you see what he's done, you know that any dollar you give is going for a good cause and something that not only will benefit you, but can benefit your children, your grandchildren, your church, the Christian community. So please, help Ryan, and do it today. Ryan, thanks for coming on, and I appreciate your appearance here, and I hope that we can continue this dialogue in the future.
Great, thanks so much for having me. I look forward to talking again.
Thank you.